Hello everybody, and welcome back to today's video. So today we're going to be talking about the 2026 governor's elections. This is my first video on the topic, and obviously I know that these elections are over a year out, but so much has already happened. And so we're going to get right into it today. Just to begin with, I'm going to go over my race classifications. So I will be going off of likelihood, not margin. So for example, if I have a state as safe, I have it that way because I see a certain political party having a guaranteed shot or almost guaranteed shot at winning that state. I don't know what the margin would be in each individual state. I'm not going to be doing that in this video. I just don't see any chance of the other party winning in that state. Next would be likely, which basically means that I view one political party with a significant advantage in winning that state, in winning that election. However, there is a scenario or a few realities where I could see the race being competitive and potentially flipping to the other side. That takes us to the lean classification, which basically means that I am giving a certain political party an advantage in that state. However, I still expect the race to be competitive and anything could happen, although one party does have an advantage. And finally, that takes us to tilt, which basically means that one political party or candidate has an extremely narrow advantage in the state, but anything could happen. It's going to go down to the wire in November. It's going to be close. One political party has a very, very, very narrow tilt advantage, but anything could happen. So to begin with, I'm going to be characterizing all of the races I have as safe and likely. I'm not going to be doing an analysis on every state. I'll just quickly go through them right now. So I'll start off with Republicans. For that, I have Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Iowa, Ohio, Arkansas, Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, South Carolina, Florida, Vermont. Yes, Vermont, surprisingly. And I believe that's it for the safe races. For the Democrats, it's Oregon, California, Hawaii, Colorado, New Mexico, Illinois, Minnesota, yes, Pennsylvania, Maine, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Maryland. I'll now be filling in the likely races. For the Republicans, in this context, I'm only going to be putting Alaska and Kansas as well as New Hampshire in this category. And for the Democrats, I will be giving them the state of New York as a likely race. In future videos and as time moves forward, New York might become a safe race, but we'll wait and see for now. And so that takes us into these 5 toss-up races, the 5 remaining races. Now, I will classify some of these states as likely, but the reason why I've saved them towards the end is because I expect that likely classification to change. That likely classification is temporary, and these races will become competitive eventually. So for the 5 remaining states, we're going to be going in the order of least competitive, relatively speaking, least competitive to the most competitive. And the, quote, least, relatively speaking, competitive state I have is the state of Michigan, which for now I will be classifying as likely blue. And the reason for this is because of an independent candidate, Mike Duggan. Now, Mike Duggan is running as an independent. However, if you take a look at his political positions and how he would govern, he is center-left. He is from Wayne County, which for those of you who don't know is Detroit. And in the general election, he would definitely take more votes away from a Democrat than the Republican. Because normally I would have this race as safe blue, in the sense that I expect the Democrats almost certainly win the state. My reasoning for this being that when Donald Trump is not on the ballot, Republicans often struggle in Michigan. You saw that back in 2018. Whitmer won by 9.6%, and then in 2022, and she increased it a point to 10.5%. Republicans struggle to win in Michigan when Donald Trump is not on the ballot. Even if you take a look at the Senate races when he is on the ballot, in 2024, the Democrats still won by 0.34%. In 2020, the Democrat won by 1.7%. Republicans struggle to win in Michigan when Trump is even on the ballot, and when he's not on the ballot, it is often a death sentence for Republican candidates. So I would actually have this race as safe blue, but because of Mike Duggan, the third party candidate, I have it as likely blue. And just as an overview of the candidates, I do expect the Michigan Secretary of State Benson to become a Democrat nominee. If you take a look at polling, it's still pretty far out from the election, but that's just an insurmountable lead. Garland Gilchrist, the lieutenant governor, has just been running a non-existent campaign. I expect the Secretary of State Benson to get the Democrat nomination. In the Republican primary, I do expect John James to become the Republican nominee for the governorship in the state of Michigan, and for him be a third loss at the statewide level, losing the Senate race in 2018, losing the Senate race in 2020, and now losing the governor's race in 2026. So not a very good day or election cycle, I guess I could say, for John James, but that is politics sometimes. And now moving on to the next state, which is the state of Georgia. I do have this race as likely R for now. And the reason for this is because you would think that this race would be competitive. Donald Trump only won the state by 2 points in 2024. In 2020, Biden won the state. If you take a look back at the governor's races, back in 2018, Georgia only voted for the Republican by 1 point. If you take a look at Georgia's Senate races, the Democrat won by 3 points in 2022. In 2020, the Democrats flipped and still currently hold both Georgia Senate seats. If you take a look back at my Senate prediction video, I have George Eslin Bloom in that prediction. But the reason why I have it as likely R in the governor's races is because if you take a look at the candidates, the Democratic Party currently is running no one for this race, or at least no one who has a chance of winning. Stacey Abrams would probably be their best shot. She came very close in 2018. In 2022 was a localized red wave in the state of Georgia. But no high-profile Democrat, other than a few state assembly members, have announced that they'll be seeking this race. I know that the former Republican Jeff Duncan has publicly expressed interest in running for the race. I don't know about that. He's a former Republican, still is conservative on many issues. I don't know how Democrat voters in the state would respond to that. And if you look at the Republican primary, they are running their attorney general and lieutenant governor. So both already elected statewide officials. And for that reason, I have this state as likely R for now. If Democrats are able to field a strong candidate, that race could absolutely change. We now move on to number 3, which is Nevada, which I'll be classifying as lean R. The reason for this is because Nevada has historically been a blue state until it flipped to Donald Trump in 2024 by 3 points. Now, before this, in 2020, Biden won the state by 2 points, and in 2016, Clinton won it by 2 points. If you take a look back at the Nevada Senate race this past November, the Democrat incumbent held on by 1.6% on the same ballot that Trump won the state by 3 points by. In 2022, it was the narrowest Senate race in the nation, with the Democrat winning by just under 1 percentage point. However, in the governor's race that year, keep in mind, in the blue wave, or relatively small blue wave year of 2022, The only election that the Republicans flipped from the Democrats was Nevada, where Joe Lombardo, the current governor, defeated incumbent governor at the time, Steve Sisolak, by 1.5%. And if you take a look at the race, the Democrat nominee will most likely be the current Attorney General statewide official, Aaron Ford, who does have a shot at winning. However, I don't have the exact numbers here, but Joe Lombardo is a popular governor. He is a moderate Republican. He is pro-choice for the most part on abortion. He has kept his distance from the National Republican Party and Donald Trump. And in only one poll, which yes was over 2 years ago, and by the time of the election will be 3 years old, did have Lombardo up by 21 points, which obviously that's not going to hold, but that does say that does speak volumes about this race. And so for now, I do have the race as lean R, which now takes us to our second to last state, Wisconsin, which I'll be characterizing as lean blue. Now, this race just recently got a lot more interesting, with incumbent Governor Tony Evers saying that he would not seek re-election to a third term in office. However, I actually don't think that changes anything. Before I made this video, back when Tony Evers could have still potentially ran, I had the race as lean D. I still have the race as lean D. The Democrats have a very, very strong bench. They're running their incumbent lieutenant governor. There has been some speculation that Josh Kaul, the Attorney General of Wisconsin, could run. Sarah Goldwaski, the Secretary of State, could all run. Ben Wickler, the former chair of the Wisconsin Democrat Party, could also run. He is responsible for the state of Wisconsin remaining blue for so long. Despite Trump's 2 wins in the state, he has led the Wisconsin Democrat Party to much success. So the Democrats have a very strong bench, whoever they choose as their nominee. Whereas in the Republican primary, it will most likely end up being Republican Representative Tom Tiffany, who is a MAGA Republican. He is to the decently far right. He's not completely far right, but he is by no means a moderate who could win in the state. And Scott Walker, the former governor, has also jokingly floated that he could jump back in the race. And it is extremely hard as a governor to come back and win back your governor's seat, especially considering that he did lose his bid for re-election back in 2018. And so moving to 2026, I do have the race as lean blue, especially given the fact that it was the narrowest state in the 2024 presidential election, voting for Trump by only 0.8%, in 2020 being won by less than 1 point, in 2016 being won by less than 1 point. And so I do have the race as lean blue. And it has the same issue for Republicans as Michigan, where they struggle to win when Trump is not on the ballot. And now that brings us to our final state, which is the state of Arizona, which I have as Tilt D. And the reason for this is because incumbent Democrat Governor Katie Hobbs has not announced yet, but is expected to seek re-election. And having your incumbent governor run for re-election is always a strength. And in the Republican primary, it will most likely end up being Republican Andy Biggs, who will become the Republican nominee, who is a MAGA Republican. And MAGA Republicans generally do not do well in Arizona. They prefer a much more McCain, Mitt Romney, George W. Bush style of Republican. However, in 2024, Arizona voted for Trump by the most of any swing state, by 5.5%. In 2020, in terms of the raw number of votes, it was Biden's closest state, winning the state by only about, I believe it was 10,000 votes. If I can get that to show, I might not be able to. Sorry, I can't this time. But Biden only carried the state by 10,000 votes, the narrowest of any state by the raw number of votes in the country. We're on the same ballot that Trump won the state by 5.5% in, Democrat Ruben Gallego won by almost 2.5 points, which shows that Arizona is still competitive for the Democrat Party. And it's for that reason, especially given the fact that 2026 will be at the very least a tilt blue advantage year, I do characterize the race as tilt blue. So, in summary, I actually only have one gain so far for either political party in the entire country, and that is the state of Kansas, just because that is a red state with a blue Democrat governor who cannot seek re-election. But other than that, I actually have no flips so far. All of these races, besides Kansas, would be holds, which I think is really interesting and speaks volumes about the increased political polarization and the events happening in all of these states. But as always, though, these are just my thoughts. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below.